Hi, Dion. You okay?
I'm fine, Ben. How are you?
The tone in your voice makes you sound wonderfully okay after yesterday's budget. Are you feeling a bit flat? Are you feeling as flat as the budget was, Dion?
It wasn't the budget that we were kind of hoping, but it was a worse budget than we were expecting, maybe. It is a
A worse
strange
budget than
budget.
do you think like it's one of those ones where everything was doom and gloom and nuclear apocalypse before or yesterday?
Yeah,
And I can't help but feel underwhelmed, but maybe it's a good underwhelmed. I can't
well,
quite I
it's an interesting one because what they did, and they have had a habit of increasingly doing this from Treasury now, is trailing, as it's called, where they want to get some of the measures out and see what the public perception to them are. And I think they did that way too much. So the Chancellor, I'll say CX, so the Chancellor seemed to be a bit nervous almost about how some of the measures would be landing. There was an awful lot of trailing in the media. Kemi was obviously brutal with some of that kind of response to that, where Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, went on TV to say there might be increases to income tax, but there hasn't been any increases to income tax. But we've had the continuation of fiscal drag, which was meant to be ending. So we were hoping that was going to end, but that's continuing. But
yeah.
We've got this.
Well, we've got the extra 2% on property income and savings, right? To kind of align it with. So I know what you mean in terms of obviously no increase to income taxes generally, but yeah, obviously
generally, yeah. We do have that 2%, but the general.
Yeah, I do.
That's not changed.
I do. That meme spring to mind. I feel like she was like pre-budget. It was like exit tax.
Yeah,
like it was, and everyone was like rabble, pitchforks, and it's like I never do exit tax, never do exit tax.
I mean, I'm sure you're quite pleased as well because tax on LLP partners isn't there.
I mean, I'm not one to say, but yes, I'm glad that didn't find its way into the budget. Although I'm sure I read somewhere, and again, I can't remember where I read this now, but I'm sure I read somewhere that given the number of people within this profession that would have affected, it didn't surprise me that there was an article at some point where they were like, we've already found a way around it. So it was...
US partnerships seem to be increasingly touted as the way around the LLP particular issue, shall we say.
Yeah, but let's focus on what the budget means for our dear crypto holders, right? Okay. So I say crypto holders, people in crypto businesses. I mean, there was a lot of noise. I felt she managed to stand up there for an incredibly long period of time without, I guess, in my opinion, really delivering too much content. A lot of it was, again, still just pokes at other people and a lot of rabble. And obviously, post-budget, we all sit there, literally hitting refresh on gov.uk or whatever website of choice to try and get the budget documents afterwards, which took a long time yesterday.
Yes.
Usually, unless I've just got my rose-tinted glasses on in previous years, usually they're on within, it feels like minutes, but it might be up to an hour. But yesterday, we were waiting for ages.
We have been, and let's be clear, not all of the documents are out yet. So my favorite document, if you can call it that, that's a bit of a sad one, is the OOTLAR. Not only does it sound fun, the
OOTLAR,
OOTLAR. The OOTLAR is the overview of tax legislation and rates. So that's kind of the document that HMRC will drop everything into to get to the detail of what's there. And like you're saying, normally by the time she's finished at the dispatch box, which for those of you who don't know what the dispatch box is, and I've had this comment recently, it's the speaky table. When they go up to the front and they've got the box there, that's the dispatch box.
Where does the dispatch come from? Why is it the dispatch or dispatching information? What's the a dispatch box?
Where they go and stand, there's a box, and that's what they lean upon. And they lean upon the dispatch box. And when they go up to talk at the front there, they're going up to the dispatch box. Which is why you'd have heard Kemi also talking about, she just comes up to the dispatch box. It's a box where they would put information, but it's where they would also stand to have the the attention of the House. But
it's a school day. Okay. Is the lack of information? Is the lack of information following the budget to make up for the information we received before the budget?
I think quite possibly the quite shocking publication by the OBR, and let's face it, the OBR team will be run by, this isn't anything that Rachel can control. Rachel Reeves.
So is it, because they're obviously cynical
yeah.
Right? Is it again, like, if we think about the noise pre-budget and the lack of that was in the budget, then obviously the review was published pre-budget. Again, is that just to make more noise? Because you're saying she's got no control, but I feel again it took attention away from the budget as well. No, this is me getting into the weeds, because there was such a furore around the review being released. Everyone was reading it pretty much as she was talking. Exactly.
This is what they don't want, because in any political narrative, when you're trying to deliver something which is going to be contentious, as every budget always is, the last thing you want them is to be able to get ahead of some of the points that you want to raise attention. Joy politics. You want to raise attention into the things that you want people to focus on, and kind of look away from the other bits. It's like, you want to be on some of those bits. You want to be the Homer Simpson, if we go back to the memes, slinking back into the into the hedge. Yeah, slowly but surely. And on some of the other bits, you want to be ahead. So the fact that would actually give them ammunition, forewarned, as forearmed, for what they can actually attack on before she gets there, that is just not what you want. And certainly, no, for my time, when I've been trying to deliver any policy stuff, when you're up in that box trying to give evidence, the last thing you'd ever want is someone to have sight of anything that gives the details away, because you kind of just want to get in and get out with your life, if you will. So for her, that was definitely shocking. And from the other side, anytime you have any budget documents, there's such sensitivity around them. There is a publication team for the website, so obviously it's not like policy officials who do that. That's obviously all been delegated to the teams, and the teams are meant to control that, and that's why they will launch things at particular times to make sure that it comes out in a timely way. So it's very shocking, I thought.
So we're still waiting on the OOTLAR doopity-doo.
Still working on
the but we do obviously have I guess we've got what we've got to go on. For crypto asset owners or businesses, obviously we were hoping that there'd be a bit around DeFi. Obviously we had the DeFi consultation. It's getting so long now, I forget when it is, and I'm worried that because crypto moves so quickly, I either think it's too shorter or far too far ago. But I'm sure it's now been a few years. Wasn't it summer 22? Summer 22?
So I've been at Anderson for 3 years and 2 months, I want to say. I remember it was February 2022 when I proposed this measure to the then Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, and he accepted it as being something to go forward. And then it was in the summer 22. Well, we had to call for evidence initially, which was literally just before I went in the summer, in Anderson, and then we had the consultation document the following year in 2023, and then silence. But there hasn't been silence. Now we have Anderson, myself. We have been involved in continual conversations with HMRC around what this measure could look like, but because they haven't been making it public, and because they have the sensitivity around it, we haven't been able to actually say much about what's happening with DeFi. Helpfully, in the budget document, it did highlight that there were conversations about DeFi, but it hasn't made it, unfortunately, to a budget measure. And again, because we're not seeing all the documents necessarily on the website, so you have to do some hunting. And so,
have you been on the dark net, Dion? Have you been on the dark net where HMRC publishes all the secret DeFi source?
No, I just went to the OBR and said, "Excuse me, can you give me some other documents you shouldn't have given out yet?" So what we've got is, this has definitely been on HMRC's radar since 2022. And like you say, it feels like it hasn't been going anywhere, but there's been continued consultations. There has been a change of approach that HMRC were looking to do after 2023. So they were going to do a particular approach. We would call it like treating it like a repo, it's called, so treating it like a security. But many people in the industry actually said this is actually going to be confusing for most users. What we would rather is have a no gain, no loss position. What that means is that when you enter your liquidity position, instead of that being a disposal as it currently is due to the way that the law works on beneficial ownership, what you then would happen, it would be still seen as a disposal, but one at no gain or no loss. So it's not creating a taxable event at that particular point in time, which you have to pay gain on, which has been the big problem. So when you enter a DeFi position, a liquidity position, when you enter that and you put, let's say, 10 Bitcoin in there, if you bought those back in 2014, you'd be recognizing a very large gain that you'd have to pay tax on, but you haven't actually got any new funds to actually realize that to pay your tax bill. You can't change the approach of the law around beneficial ownership. That is just too ingrained. So what they have had to do is look at creating new legislation to mean we will end up in this no gain, no loss position. And there are moves towards this. And I have to highlight, this was previously called DeFi lending and staking. But this area of work is now, as of yesterday, officially been renamed to crypto asset loans and liquidity pools. And that is the same thing, but it's to distinguish from the fact it's not including proof of staking. So staking and also perhaps the term before DeFi lending was taken too literally, and people considered it wasn't relevant to centralized exchanges. But back in 2022, when you were doing this, it was kind of called.
It was all a bit jumbled. Yeah, exactly.
And so what you've actually then got now is this slightly different wording, but they're kind of acknowledged that they're looking at three areas to that they're looking for their potential approach to solve. That is single token arrangements. That's when you just go into a loan, if you will. Crypto asset borrowing arrangements and automated market makers. Now, they've acknowledged that it's very complex, and what they are also concerned about is that the speed of advancement with crypto moves at such a pace that any legislation that they create may actually be and that's always been the problem with this area, that by the time you've solved one thing, it's maybe not the de rigueur area anymore. And you know, the industry's moved on. Real world assets and stable coins are now the conversation, not lending.
Sure, but having something allows us to build on that something, right?
Absolutely. You've got to start from somewhere. And that would have actually been quite interesting, because I know in the US, there are talks about them, because they've got a similar, should we say, issue, if you will, that going into a position can actually be considered to be what they call a disposition, which is a disposal for our words. And they're trying to look at, there's been talks from the White House side of it to say, can we look at getting legislation? And so actually the UK, if we'd actually got this out, would have potentially stolen the lead on what would be seen as a significant move forward, because exactly like you're saying, if you don't start somewhere, where do you start?
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, we're just becoming ignorant of the position, right, and the difficulties that it's causing. And I mean, nil gain, nil loss is a great move forward, but we still need to keep a track of all the records and transactions and everything underneath, right? So it doesn't, unfortunately, allow us to kind of just go, cool, nil gain, no loss, off we go. I mean, I was going to say, if anything, do you think it would cause more confusion? We still see clients saying, I didn't realize crypto was taxable. I thought it was just taxable when I convert into fiat. There are still accountants in this space that are actually saying that that's the truth. So if we have this noise about, I mean, we've seen it even with the stablecoin proposals, right? The Bank of England stablecoin proposals on a systemic GBP-backed stablecoin, but we're seeing people take that headline and go, they're putting a ban on all crypto, like just taking it. And I you know, in this space, we're not new to FUD, but the misinterpretation of information. Do you think there's any sort of reluctance there about this? Do you think it could cause more confusion about a nil gain, nil loss position in crypto? Because people will see something about nil gain, nil loss and be like, cool, actually, when I just make a swap, nil gain, no loss, but actually it just relates to DeFi.
Absolutely, a lot on Tom Hicks there. So I
Sorry.
know HMRC, I know HMRC is not ignorant of that fact, because that was one of the things that I was also noting in 2022, that the problem here is that as people going into a DeFi position, because ostensibly when you're swapping from Bitcoin to like a Uniswap token to represent your position, it will feel like a swap. And so HMRC have also sought to build in what a position is. Okay, so they have done the legislation to make sure that's captured, but the perception is the challenge here, because exactly what you're saying there with some of the crypto influencers around stablecoin saying that's a complete ban on everything, when it isn't. This is going to be the problem when people are taking tax advice from TikTok rather than necessarily, should we say, trusted parties. And you see increasingly where some of the advice you see in TikTok or on X or whatever platform that you use, it misses a number of steps. It misses the reality of the situation or the complexity of the situation. Now, in this regards, also HMRC has recognized in the document that it will not simplify the administrative burden that is placed upon crypto users. It will take the no gain loss away. It will take some of the pain away, but won't take the administrative burden away. So it's acknowledged that software will probably need to be used to actually calculate the position, but it's kind of acknowledged that probably a lot of people in this sector are already fundamentally using some form of software to track their positions anyway. So yes,
you'd be amazed at the people that aren't, though.
I know I am not amazed, because I know we've dealt with them.
I was having a chat last week. With a couple of accountants who said, "Oh, we deal with a lot of tech clients, and tech people love crypto, so we end up getting a lot of crypto clients." And I said, "Oh, cool. What software do you use?" And they were like, "Software? They're doing everything in Excel. They're doing everything manually. All the Section 104 reporting manually in Excel. I think with great pain and length, and I know. Unless these people just bought some coins and tokens a few years ago and have done nothing with them, and then have sold them. I mean, that's manageable, but otherwise,
that is manageable if you keep yourself into a nice, simple position. But let's face it, who does? As soon as the next token comes out,
I know. But I digress. Right. Okay. So DeFi. Summarize DeFi, Dion. Go.
Okay. Summarize DeFi. The next steps are neither positive nor negative. A positive outcome would have been that we would have had a measure moving us forward towards the inaction of legislation. But it's not negative in so much of the fact that they're saying that the government is going to keep it under advisement, and HMRC has been tasked with continuing the engagement with stakeholders to refine any potential approach. So at least they still have what's called ministerial coverage to continue to act on this regard to try to create new legislation, because obviously a creation of law is the will of Parliament, not the will of HMRC, Treasury, and those kind will be involved, but ultimately it becomes the will of Parliament. So they still have ministerial coverage to continue this activity. It is unfortunate that we are now coming up to nearly 4 years, 2022, once we're up to February 2026. Once up to February 2026, we are now 4 years after the initial suggestion was put to the Chancellor. Well, I did so back in that February. So we feel like the activity hasn't been as quick as we want. We have also seen a number of political upsets in that time. We've had a number of different chancellors, a number of different economic secretaries of treasuries, and it's been quite a tumultuous few years in that regard. So that's DeFi.
That is DeFi. So I guess one.
So, sorry, that's not DeFi anymore. That is now. Sorry, you've got to go back to that's crypto asset loans and liquidity pools.
Crypto asset loans and liquidity pools. Collapse. Is that collapse? Crypto assets, loan and liquidity pools. Collapse.
CLALP. Collapse.
Yes,
the clap. That's a clap for you. Not DeFi.
Right. Okay. Cool. So, in other news, obviously there was lots of noise about capital gains tax going up. That didn't happen.
Nope. Another bit where crypto asset owners can actually breathe a collective sigh of relief that there is no homogenization with CTT rates.
Rates.
So we're still looking at 20% for the basic and 24% for the higher, rather than 20% and up to 45% for
exactly.
additional.
The exit tax didn't come in that we were concerned about in terms of people leaving the country. That didn't come in. So all in all, from a status quo perspective, yes, I think for founders out there was a piece, wasn't there, around actually increasing the EIS, CDIS, and VCT limits to try and help fund more UK startups, which is all very positive, and R&D reliefs, I believe, are effectively staying the same. So that's all good from a startup perspective. So I mean, I struggle. I mean, what I'm doing here is I'm procrastinating talking about the beast that you want to talk about, which is a 4-letter acronym that you love to speak about. You look confused. I know exactly. Not ISIS. No, Dion.
We need to tackle that one very quickly.
Fine, let's go.
Again, should be in the budget, but can't find the document for it yet, is what I'm going to add here.
Okay. Yeah.
So, earlier this year, due to, and this might also be another consequence of the OBRs putting stuff out when they shouldn't have, or maybe some other documents that are held up elsewhere that aren't obviously able to find. A bit like the crypto asset loans and liquidity pool document isn't obviously easy to find from the budget page. So I think there's a whole host of other documents that we will have to bring out through. So following the change of position from the FCA, allowing retail investment in crypto asset ETNs or CETNs, HMRC confirmed that it was possible for CETNs to be added to your stocks and shares ISA. This is particularly if they're traded on a recognized stock exchange. Now, since that policy announcement a few months ago, we haven't seen a lot of uptake or offering of these via your more traditional platforms like Hargreaves Lansdown or II. So we're not seeing a lot of uptake there. It might be because also it might also because October was anything but this year. And it does feel that we've had a few months of pain. So perhaps they're thinking it's not the time to release those products. However, within the announcement, it was highlighted that come the 6th of April 2026, they'll be reclassifying qualifying investment within innovative finance ISAs or IF ISAs rather than your stocks and shares ISA. Now, it's quite interesting because being an IF ISA has got different requirements to a stocks and shares ISA. And depending on what you're actually offering, depends on whom can provide it. So you've got things like peer-to-peer loans in there, crowdfunding debentures, alternative to finance arrangements, and those all play upon different parts of the legislation or on existing rules. Now, for crypto assets and to fall under an IF ISA, there needs to be some form of legislative change for that to happen, particularly from the 6th of April, because they can't just say, hey, okay, now it needs to go in there. There have to be the laws around it to do that. And what I was really keen on seeing is whether or not that would actually open up to the likes of the larger exchanges, more centralized exchanges, actually be able to offer CETNs to customers, or quite possibly whether or not crypto assets themselves could actually be added into an IF ISA. So we heard about the ISA reforms in the budget. We heard about, Rachel, about the 12,000 limit on a cash ISA, subject to your age, obviously, as they threw that one in there. But I haven't seen, and I've been going through the ISA various documents, but I haven't seen quite how this is going to be achieved. I have contacted the policy lead in HMRC on this regard to say how they're achieving this bit of magic, and I can't see any secondary legislation that just allows them by order of what would be called a negative SI, and that's one that wouldn't have to be put towards Parliament to actually make this come into effect. So I am curious as to how we're going to have that change occur from the 6th of April 2026. And obviously we are now only looking at a few months away for that. So that does need to happen, because it could have been quite a big move if you could actually hold Bitcoin directly in an IF ISA for yourselves via the larger exchanges. So that'd be good. But obviously, we do have to mention the monster in the room, the 4-letter acronym, about.
No, I haven't even asked the question yet. Don't try and jump ship and just start monologuing. You said you were going to talk about ISIS very quickly. I'll let any audience decide whether that was quick or not. And now you're even steamrolling yourself into your favorite 4-letter acronym. What's your favorite? What's your favorite 4-letter acronym, Dion?
Apparently, it's CARF. So the Crypto Asset Reporting Framework. We have been saying for some time that CARF is coming, and that's mainly because on the 13th of July 2022, the CARF framework, the technical agreement, was concluded by the OECD. That was then shared in 2022. So we have had a number of years coming up to this. In the lead up to the budget, we have, and there is always drama in this space, there's always politics. We had a number of announcements of certain jurisdictions talking about how they were going to postpone the implementation of CARF. That's notably the Swiss and Canada have been talking about how they're going to do it. We haven't had the details yet quite what that postponement will look like, and it might just be things like the Swiss imposing due diligence requirements. But there is questions as to whether or not there's going to be a to coin someone else's term, a tidal wave of postponements. The budget yesterday firmly confirmed that the United Kingdom will not be part of that, delaying parties if there are going to be others. Committing the UK to the 1st of January 2026 for the collection of information to be provided by the 31st of May 2027. I mean, of course, the actual regulations, the law has already been laid for this previously. So this is no surprise in this budget. It's been mentioned before, the law's already there, but it's just that final confirmation it is happening.
Yeah.
What I would say is there does need to be more concerted efforts, more concerted approaches, perhaps from trade groups and so forth, that to get more clout behind this. So it is always entirely possible that HMRC could have run with the crypto asset loans and liquidity pools measure if the Parliament, if ministers had actually thought that there was enough attention around it. We're not too sure why ministers have decided, because a lot of the legislation, as far as we understand, has actually been drafted, that this was not necessarily good to go. It possibly could be because ministers haven't thought that there's enough attention around it for it to be a worthwhile thing to do. And that's the next challenge, I think, with crypto is we've got to get more ministerial attention. I have to say, we heard, as you know, Ben, recently, a little plug for the ICAW's crypto and digital asset event. We heard from Lord Ranger just 2 weeks ago around whether or not there's a lot of attention of crypto in the Lords and in Parliament, and there isn't. We are talking about it. We want more push on there, but we actually need to get ministers more comfortable with it, both in the Commons and in the Lords, so we can actually get some proper movement on trying to fix some of the problems and trying to fix some of the things we want to, like crypto asset loans and liquidity pools, and for whatever comes next.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Dion, as always.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a good day.